Cheating is a game of deception, but what happens when the cheater gets outsmarted instead? I discovered my wife was having an affair, but rather than falling apart, I chose to play a careful, long-term strategy. In the end, she lost everything, and it was all thanks to the man she betrayed me with. My name is Mike. I'm 42 years old, and up until a few months ago, I thought my life was steady and secure. 12 years of marriage, 2 kids, Ethan, 10, and Lily, 7. My wife, Jessica, 39, works as a marketing director. I'm in finance, and together we'd built a comfortable life. A big house in the suburbs, great schools for the kids, and date nights whenever we could squeeze them in. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a disaster either. Looking back, maybe I was too at ease, too trusting. Jess was always busy, work events, client dinners, the occasional business trip. I never questioned it. I should have. Because while I was burning the midnight oil to ensure our future, she was chasing something else entirely. I found out the way most people do by chance. It was a random Tuesday night. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. It buzzed once. I'm not the type to snoop, but something drew my eyes to the screen. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for round 2. Winky face. The word struck me like a freight train. My stomach twisted. My breath caught in my throat. At first, I tried to deny it. Maybe it was a joke, maybe a mix-up. But deep down, I knew. My hands were already unlocking her phone, my fingers scrolling through her messages. What I uncovered confirmed it all. This wasn't a one-off slip. It had been going on for months. Late-night texts, secret meetups, lies so cleverly crafted I almost admired the skill. Almost. And the man? Brandon Sterling, 45. A successful owner of a top boutique law firm in the city. The kind of guy who wins high-profile divorce cases. The irony? He was about to lose one of his own. Anger surged inside me. I wanted to storm into the bathroom, smash her phone against the wall, demand answers, make her feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal that was tearing me apart. But something held me back. A quiet thought whispering in my mind. Why react impulsively when I can plan ahead? Jessica thought she was clever. She believed she had it all figured out. But she'd misjudged me, and that was her first mistake. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I needed. I saved her messages, took screenshots, tracked her movements, every dinner, every hotel stay, every lie she told me while she was with him. I built a case so solid that even her lawyer boyfriend couldn't poke a hole in it. Then I turned to our finances. Jessica always left the money to me, trusting I had it all under control. And I did, more than she ever imagined. I started shifting assets, closing certain accounts, redirecting funds to places she'd never suspect. Slowly, discreetly, without a single rash move. The best part? I'd already picked who'd handle our divorce, Brandon Sterling himself. Imagine his shock when he realizes he's facing off against the husband of the woman he's been sneaking around with. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to ensure she left with nothing. They say patience is a virtue, but for me it became a tool. I didn't just want to leave Jessica. I wanted to watch the life she'd built on lies crumble around her, bit by bit, while she smiled, thinking she was untouchable. And when the final strike hit, she'd lose not just me, but everything she thought she'd claim. After reading those messages between Jessica and Brandon, I stayed silent for days. I didn't act distant or raise suspicions. I didn't confront her. I let her bask in her false sense of security. That's the thing about people who betray. They assume they're always the sharpest mind in the room. She still kissed me before heading to late meetings. Still texted me, "Ugh, work is exhausting today." Probably while she was with him in some hotel. She kept up the act of the loving wife, secretly plotting a future where I'd just be a financial resource she could tap into. I had a different plan in mind. Money was my starting point. Jessica never bothered with our finances. Sure, she earned her own salary, but I'd always managed the investments, mortgage payments, and savings. We had a joint account, but I'd set up others, ones she never thought to question because she relied on me completely. That trust was about to turn against her. Over a few weeks, I began siphoning our accounts in a way that wouldn't raise flags. Small transfers here and there, adjusting balances to look like everyday spending, closing investments under the pretense of reorganizing our portfolio. Every dollar I shifted was one she'd never see again. Then came the house. We'd bought it together, but it was in my name. She never challenged that because, back then, she believed in forever. I did too once. But now, forever meant me staying in it, and her having no legal claim to even a corner of it. While she was out working late, I met with my lawyer. Not Brandon, of course, but a real professional who'd guide me discreetly through the process. I drafted documents that made it nearly impossible for her to touch anything meaningful. And in the meantime, I started quietly buying out her share without her even noticing. I refinanced the house using our joint assets to settle debts in my name. I transferred the cars to my ownership. I even sold off stocks she thought we still held. Jessica kept living like she had choices. I was making sure she had none. With a solid financial strategy in place, it was time for the legal move. I walked into Brandon Sterling's office on a bright Monday morning. His firm was sleek and pricey looking. He was the type who paid extra for that relaxed yet commanding vibe, neatly trimmed beard, slightly loosened tie, an office that smelled of high-end cologne and confidence. He smiled, offered a handshake. I took it. I told him I was exploring divorce and needed an expert in high-asset separations. His eyes sparkled with interest. Divorce law is a business, and to him I was a golden opportunity, a successful finance guy with plenty to safeguard. That meant big fees and a straightforward victory. He didn't realize he'd already lost before we even started. "Of course, Mike," he said smoothly. "I specialize in cases like yours. What's the situation?" I fed him a polished story. Jessica and I growing apart, uncertainty about our future, me wanting to be ready. He nodded, scribbled notes, already picturing his payout. "I always tell my clients," he said, leaning in, "divorce is a game of strategy. You've got to stay ahead. Oh, Brandon, you have no idea how far ahead I already am." After an hour, I officially hired him as my lawyer. That tied him to me legally, and blocked him from representing Jessica if she came knocking. Imagine his reaction when he learns the woman he's been secretly seeing is his client's wife. Imagine his frustration when she turns to him for help, only to hear, "Sorry, I can't." Conflict of interest. I left his office that day with a grin. With Brandon out of her reach, I began dropping subtle hints, just enough to unsettle Jessica. "Hey, Jess, I read this wild article about a guy who caught his wife cheating and walked away with everything in the divorce. Crazy, huh? You ever think about what life would be like if we weren't together? Just, hypothetically? I was checking our finances recently. It's amazing how one wrong move could ruin someone's whole future." Each time, I caught that spark of worry in her eyes. She didn't know I knew, but she was starting to feel something was off. Her texts grew more guarded. She began locking her phone. She asked why I was reviewing financial statements. I just smiled. "Just keeping us safe, babe." I could sense it. She was getting jittery. The walls were tightening, and she had no clue how much tighter they'd get. Because I wasn't finished. One night, I made up a story about meeting a friend for drinks. I didn't go. Instead, I parked a block from our house, waited, and watched. At exactly 9:47 p.m., I saw her step outside, glance at her phone, and slide into a black SUV. Brandon's car. I followed them, keeping my distance. I didn't need to catch them in the moment. I just needed proof. They pulled into a hotel. I snapped photos. Jessica wasn't just sneaking around with her divorce lawyer. She was bold enough to use our shared money to fund their nights. I let them have their evening. I let them feel untouchable. Then, the next morning, I left printed photos of them walking into the hotel on the kitchen counter. No note, no argument, just the evidence. She found them when she came down for coffee. I heard her sharp intake of breath, the papers quivering in her hands. She turned to me, eyes wide with panic. I sipped my coffee and said, "We should talk." She had no idea how much worse it was about to get. Jessica thought she was in the clear. She thought she was the clever one with everything under control. But she didn't realize that from the moment I saw that first text, her fate was sealed. When she picked up those photos from the counter, I saw her face break. First shock, then fear, and then, my favorite part, the frantic calculating. She was scrambling, searching for a way out, trying to gauge how much I knew and how much I was guessing. I let her stand there in silence, gripping the photos of her and Brandon, caught in the act. I let her stomach churn while I casually sipped my coffee. Then I spoke. "Take a seat, Jess." She hesitated. I raised an eyebrow. "Now." She sat. I watched her eyes dart around the kitchen, hunting for an angle, a lifeline. She was about to learn there were none left. I leaned back and started, my voice calm and deliberate. "I've known for a while," I said. I didn't react because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to see if you'd at least try to cover your tracks better. But you didn't. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Not yet. I've been busy these past few weeks, Jess. You've been out there playing your little game with him. Meanwhile, I've been erasing you from our life." Her face went pale. That was the first real blow. "You probably haven't noticed, but you don't own anything anymore. The house? In my name. The savings? Moved, gone. The investments? Cashed out. Our joint accounts? Empty." Her breathing sped up. I could see her running the numbers in her head. "There's nothing left for you, Jessica." Panic flashed in her eyes. That's when it hit her. "But," she stammered, "I still have my own accounts." I smiled. "Yeah? Check them." With shaky hands, she grabbed her phone, opened her banking app, and froze. Jessica's personal accounts were empty. The color drained from her face. "How?" she whispered. "You always let me handle the bills, remember?" I said, my tone almost teasing. "So I knew your security answers, your favorite flower, your mom's maiden name. I knew where the accounts were. And I made sure you'd have nothing left." She was trembling now. You can't do that," she croaked. "That's illegal." I shrugged. "Prove it." She knew she couldn't. I'd done it all carefully over weeks, small, untraceable withdrawals, funds shifted to places she had no rights to. I'd had lawyers check it first. She had no recourse. "You're out of your mind," she whispered. I grinned.
"No, yes.
"I'm just better at this than you." She looked like she wanted to scream, cry, throw something, anything to take back control. But she still had one hope, Brandon. I let her hold onto it for 5 seconds before pulling out another folder. She stared at it like it might explode. "Go ahead," I said. "Open it." She didn't move, so I did it for her. Inside were copies of all her texts, every flirty message, every hotel booking, even photos of her getting into Brandon's car. Everything. Her breathing grew uneven. "You thought I'd just take it, didn't you?" I said, watching her. "That I'd be some broken husband pleading for answers. You thought you'd walk away with the house, the kids, the bank accounts, and I'd just fade away." Her lip trembled. Fear had her now. "But that's not how it works, Jess. You took a risk. Now you see what happens when you underestimate someone smarter than you." Her last hope was Brandon, and I knew she'd try it. She forced a defiant look. "I'll get a lawyer. You can't ruin me like this." I laughed. "You mean Brandon?" Her face twitched. I leaned in. "He can't represent you." She blinked. What? "You heard me. He can't take your case. 'Cause guess what, sweetheart? I already hired him. Silence. I could see her mind crumbling. She gasped, shaking her head. You know that's not. Oh, it's real. I cut in. 2 weeks ago, I walked into his office, sat down, and hired him as my divorce attorney. He was thrilled, saw me as an easy win. And the best part? He had no clue I was the husband of the woman he was sneaking around with. She gripped the table for support. That means when you go running to him, he's legally bound to say no. You'll have to settle for some low-rate lawyer. And trust me, Jess, you'll need the best to even scrape by with a shred of dignity. Tears welled in her eyes. I tilted my head. Oh, and you might want to warn your boyfriend. His firm has a strict no-fraternization policy. If this gets out, he's finished. He loses it all. Just like you. She broke. A choked sob escaped, her hands covering her face. For the first time in months, I felt peace. This was justice. This was payback. This was her finally facing the consequences. I stood, walked to the door, then paused, glancing back. I've already filed the divorce papers, I said. You'll be served soon. Her eyes shot up wide with dread. Oh, and Jess, I added, I'm going for full custody. With this evidence, you don't have a shot. Then I walked out, leaving her to sink in the chaos she'd created. Jessica tried to push back, but she had nothing. No money, no lawyer, no ground to stand on. When the divorce finalized, she got a tiny settlement, barely enough to survive. She lost the house. She lost the cars. She lost her kids. And Brandon? He panicked, tried to hush it up, but word got out. His firm found out, and within weeks he was forced to step down. His reputation crashed. Clients abandoned him. His career was over. As for me, I moved into a new home with my kids. My finances were secure. My life was better than ever. And Jessica? She called me once, begging for a second chance, saying she had nowhere to go. I didn't answer. She made her decisions, and I made sure she'd live with them forever. Game over. Jessica's world was shattered, and the pieces were still falling. She'd lost it all. The house, the money, the kids, and the lawyer she thought would rescue her. The worst part? She had only herself to blame. I figured she'd vanish after the divorce. Maybe start over somewhere else. Perhaps find another wealthy guy to latch onto. But no, she didn't fade quietly. She tried to fight back. A month after losing the house, I got a text from an unknown number. I want to talk. Please. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. It was Jessica. She looked terrible. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, still wearing that designer coat she'd once adored. But now it hung on her like it didn't belong. Like she didn't belong here anymore. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What do you want? I asked, my tone flat. She tried a weak smile. Mike, can we just talk? Talk? She hadn't wanted to talk when she was sneaking around behind my back, whispering to Brandon about feeling trapped in our marriage. I said nothing. I waited. Her smile faltered. I made a mistake, she whispered. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought I wanted something else. But Her voice broke. I just want my family back. I nearly laughed. Her family? The one she tossed aside for a fleeting thrill? The one she thought she could wreck and still come out ahead? I shook my head. No, Jessica. That's not how this works. Tears brimmed in her eyes. But Mike, I've got nothing left. That's not my concern. She swallowed hard, desperation flashing across her face. She knew this was her last play. Please, she pleaded. I'll do anything. Just let me back in. For the kids. The kids. She really thought she could use them to guilt me, that mentioning our children would erase her choices. That I'd cave. I met her gaze. The kids are doing fine, I said. And they don't ask about you. It wasn't true. Ethan and Lily still wondered about their mom sometimes, but I wasn't giving her that leverage. She'd made her bed. She could lie in it. Her face crumpled. It was done. She turned, shuffling back down the driveway. I watched, waiting for her to give up entirely. But she wasn't through. When pleading failed, Jessica changed tactics. If she couldn't win legally, she'd try to tarnish my name. She started telling people I'd stolen her money, tricked her into signing things she didn't understand, rigged the courts to take the kids. At first, I thought it was pitiful, a desperate grab for attention. But then I noticed something. People were listening. Old friends grew awkward around me. Family members started asking questions. Even co-workers pulled me aside, concern etched on their faces. Jessica was losing, but she wanted to drag me down with her. I wasn't having it. I didn't just defend, I attacked. First, my lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, warning her that if she kept spreading lies, she'd face a defamation lawsuit. Then I went public. I had all the proof, messages, bank records, everything showing she'd ruined herself. I didn't just share it with family, I let it circulate. Within a week, our old social circle knew the real story. Jessica went from poor betrayed wife to the woman who cheated, lost it all, and tried to play the victim. Even her own family turned their backs. She had no money, no friends, no credibility, and that's when Brandon cut her loose too. While Jessica floundered, Brandon was scrambling to save himself. After resigning from his firm, he tried opening a small practice, low-key cases, hoping to rebuild his name. It didn't work. His reputation was trashed. No one wanted a lawyer who'd been caught sneaking around with a client's wife, only to be outplayed by the man he'd wronged. 2 months later, I got an email from Brandon. Subject line, "You won." I opened it. It was brief, almost sad. "I don't expect you to care, but I've lost everything. My career's done. Jessica's gone. Just wanted you to know." That was it. I read it, smirked, and closed it. No reply. Jessica tried to piece her life back together, but with no money, no network, no trust, she struggled. Last I heard, she was stuck in a dead-end job, renting a cramped apartment, still spinning tales of being wronged to anyone who'd listen. But no one buys it anymore. Brandon vanished from the legal scene, moving to a small town, trying to practice under a new name. But a stained reputation doesn't wash clean. And me? I moved forward, rebuilt. I met someone better, loyal, genuine, someone who values what she has. Jessica always thought she was too smart to get caught, too slick to face the fallout. But in the end, she learned a hard truth. Never cross someone who's sharper than you. Because if you do, you don't just lose, you lose it all. For the first time in years, I woke up feeling free. No lies, no doubts, just calm. Peace. Victory. Jessica was gone, Brandon was finished, and I had what mattered. My home, my kids, the satisfaction of knowing I'd outplayed them both. But winning wasn't the finish line. The real question was, what's next? Life without Jessica was better than I'd dreamed. The house felt lighter without her shadow. The kids were happier. Ethan told me once, "Dad, you laugh more now." And it hit me hard. Had I been that weighed down? I just hadn't seen it. Without her excuses, hidden messages, and business trips, life felt right again. I started cooking more. Pancakes on Sundays, the kids giggling as batter splattered. Taking them on weekend drives, picking up golf and my old guitar, chords echoing through the house like they hadn't since college. I wasn't just getting by, I was thriving. Then I met Claire, purely by chance. She was ahead of me in a coffee shop, debating oat milk with the barista like it was a courtroom drama. I cracked a joke. She rolled her eyes and fired back, "Some of us have taste." That was it. She was different. No secrets, no games, no need for anyone's approval but her own. She didn't rely on me. She chose me. After all I'd been through, that was everything. I wondered if I could trust again, but Claire never gave me a reason not to. Open, honest, real. For once, that was enough. One night, nearly a year post-divorce, I sat on my porch, whiskey in hand, stars blinking overhead, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I knew who it was. I let it ring, then picked up out of curiosity. Mike! Jessica's voice, thin, fragile. I leaned back, smirking. Jess, what's this about? Silence. A shaky breath. I messed up. I almost laughed. Yeah, I noticed. Another pause. I thought Brandon would take care of me, but after he lost his job, a deep breath. I've got nothing, Mike. There it was, the moment I'd waited for. Jessica, once so sure she'd outsmart me, now a broken shell, thinking I'd pull her out. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she whispered. A year ago I might have cared. Now, nothing. So I did what she didn't expect. I hung up. No yelling, no words, just silence. That's all she deserved. I never heard from her again. She faded into a ghost story, a warning of what happens when you throw away what matters. I had it all, a home, happy kids, a woman who stays. I'd won the fight and reclaimed my life. Game. Set. Match. Do you think people like Jessica and Brandon truly regret what they did? Or just that they got caught?